everybody remember what we did last class?
One of
Ward off, that's
applications.
correct. So, can partner up and show me what you remember.
Oh,
Attack.
Yep, Spider-Man. Mhm.
right.
No, let's say I like commencement, you attack. And I just
Don't hurt me, don't hurt me.
And we did one off left before, didn't we?
Thought I was gonna be
I think we just started the word off right.
Okay, but
What's the
We
word?
haven't picked up.
What's the word for oogie?
The oogie is the person that's gonna attack and get
I
stuff
thought I
done.
was gonna be the oogie.
Hoogie's back.
yeah, you're the dookie. I gotta be
No,
nice
that's
to you, don't
too
like
late.
it, because they won't play with you.
That's true.
Yeah, so.
So it's a case of letting me go by.
I get out of the way.
Get out of the way, that's the best block of the punches, get out of the way.
Okay.
Want me to attack?
Sure.
Okay.
This is very good. The only edit I would make is that you actually are making contact with it.
And I'm
When
gonna
you're
aim
not.
for your face.
You do, yeah, you do.
Okay,
Well, I
because,
mean,
That's the way it's
assuming you
gonna
guys
be.
are.
Exactly. It's the first time you see
doing
something
the
in your
application. So,
face.
right, you would make contact
if I
with
always
that
don't
punch,
hear, it doesn't,
even though
doesn't do
it-
justice.
you're out here. So you wouldn't like not make
But I'm not
contact,
making
and then make contact. Does that make sense?
Try it again.
And even worse, you can see on the hand, but now for what we're doing.
Yes,
The
Yes.
difference can be on the inside instead of the
yes.
outside.
Okay. You look angry.
So should it either this way or this way?
It ultimately is gonna turn out this way.
You gotta turn it.
So it's okay if you turn it up?
Ultimately,
Well,
you hit and turn, or you
Huh?
turn and hit.
oh,
Would you like to demonstrate?
yes, you can do that.
Let's try it again.
So it's gonna also depend on where I make contact with him. So if I just kept going, my hand would turn further out. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So it's,
I like being abused. I like you being abused. You learn a
My
lot.
arm
yeah, it's,
extended, it comes down.
It's gonna vary, like if I'm, same thing with,
I don't need
with,
to push you
with
away.
punching, you know, you'll see punches turn over.
Right.
But like in hidden hand punch, it's close, so it only goes
Already hit
to
you.
here.
Already
If
hit
it had
you.
continued, it would have turned all the way over. Similarly to this, if it's a word out from front, it's gonna be here. But the more I turn, the more that's gonna rotate out.
Show that.
Does that make
Yes,
sense?
it does. Thank you.
A little bit different than like in some of the external styles where there's a very muscular, deliberate turning out of, it's doing the same thing, but in a more deliberate, like I am turning my wrist to turn out. This naturally happens by making
Let's not wait
this.
over here,
Good question.
Here, you show me.
Good?
Sure.
I'm gonna follow
Yes,
through on this.
very good.
Stepping into,
Yes.
okay. It works. Okay.
So we'll talk a little bit about that because this is actually a twofer. So it's, the first word off is here, but then to get to the next one, there's that shift. So it's okay to put that in there because you're basically halfway to the next one. Does that make sense? Good, good, keep going.
Oh, no, that's the,
Make sure everyone has a chance to practice.
Now, I think it's the oogie here, or right, the oogie's right foot should be stepping up into the punch too, something.
Yes, ideally, because again, it's a committed attack, and which jabs don't work with Tai Chi.
No, if I'm coming at you,
Right.
no.
we're gonna follow through.
Okay, you're the oogie.
Good, good, good.
I'll follow through again.
And then don't come down, stay
Okay,
out.
Lisa, back to the leg. Kick out the knee. I'm that way.
Stay out, not down.
Now I'm not gonna follow.
So
Well,
it's,
I have to go down, okay, just raise your hip.
well, that's true, but then don't
Don't keep pressing.
keep pressing down. Yes, yes, I see what you mean. But when you're finishing, you're kind of here versus here.
Versus,
Knee is
Yeah.
the step.
This is my posture.
First punch.
Yes, and you're using arm strength.
You still have
That's okay.
You're using arm strength instead of body.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. Better, yes, yes. And same thing with someone who resists that urge to come down a little bit, so it should stay close to the Yeah.
The little drama queen.
Okay.
Any questions, comments, suggestions, anything like that? It looks really good. One of the things that's gonna be a little bit tough to break mentally about Tai Chi applications is we're not actually trying to control our opponent. I mean, we are, but we're not willfully controlling them. So in the way that comes out in this application is that urge to then control the arm down, like it's not a downward block. So it's here. Even as I shift into it to get ready to do the next one, I'm not using my arm as a lever to push their punch down. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of instinctive, like I want to grab or I want to do that, and most of the time in Tai Chi, we're not doing that. It's a more fluid way of interacting with an opponent. So that's one. Two, doesn't really have anything to do with what I just said. I'm just before I forget. So if anybody, whether you're watching at home or you're here, if you're concerned about close proximity with applications, I mean, everyone here is kind of in their own bubble. We have a great ventilation system, but you can always add a face shield to your mask if you're worried about, breaking that six foot distance.
Need to get the spray bottle.
There you go.
Or I'll just get the disinfectant and hose everybody down.
There you go.
So that's by no means required, but that's just another layer of safety if you're at all concerned about, getting in, breaking that 6 foot bubble. So just putting that out there as housekeeping in the age of COVID.
Thank you.
And, okay, so you ready to look at the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so just like the beginning of the form, I know I'm facing the camera, so imagine me going that way. So this first application that we just did would be here. That's ward off right. And you've been, Master Gohring showed you how to then step into that. Well, that step in is to get you ready to do this ward off. So that's why that shift happens. So basically the first application is here. It stops here. By doing this, you're getting ready to do this next one. Okay, so that's where we're headed. And this one is, so ward off the person, and now we're gonna do a little bit of a grab. Not a,
Body.
I'm gonna do an air for just a second, and then I'll have a body. So here, loose grab, just enough to hook, not a vice grip, okay? That's that thing I'm talking about, like you wanna grab, you don't have to grab, you just have to hook a little bit. I'm gonna shift, and with my body weight, I'm gonna do a body check with this part of my hand, roughly around here. So, camera, so I'm here, I shift, hook, strike. Make sense? Do one more a little bit closer here. Here, hook, strike. Now notice, I didn't just use my hand, I shifted and I turned my body into it. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right, need to see it again, or do you think you can practice?
If you could see it again.
Sure, sure. So I ward off, notice I didn't do this,
Right.
I ward it off, then I kind of hook, so it's here, hook. Am I grabbing you hard?
No.
Okay, and then I shift, turn, strike. Make sense? Any questions?
Give it a try.
Give it a try.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Fundamental points here are the, don't grab too hard, and then use your body to do that strike. So go ahead, do a step, there you go. Uh-huh.
Turn my body.
Well,
Feel right?
Getting closer.
this is different.
So this is good, but see, notice your hip is here. You step, turn here, and let the strike be.
We're starting from.
Okay.
Yes,
That's
there
it.
you go,
That's it.
there you go.
That's it.
Okay.
Do it again.
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
Grab my,
Uh-huh.
grab my vest. You're supposed to cut.
Just hook, yeah, just a light hook.
Would open hand be okay?
Open it is okay, it's just, so like, I'm here, but if you try to get away, then it hooks a
If you
little
just had
bit.
a hook, you could pull away.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you could, but it's a little easier if you just think kind of middle finger thumb. And it's light until he gives me reason to think it should not be light. Does that make sense? Good, good.
I felt that.
You felt it.
I felt it. No, it's good. I felt my balance and everything they got.
Make sure both people get a chance to practice.
Yes, ma'am.
Step up
I keep forgetting to do that.
and turn.
Yeah.
Good.
What's happening? Oh.
Now, I can pretty much put my foot wherever I want to open up.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm not tied to that spot.
Correct, and that's a good point. Team, for just a second,
Team.
and then gonna go over another minute or two, but just as Mr. Gohring said on Tuesday, the foot placement, like when we do the form, he called it the ABCs, like we're gonna, we tell ourselves where we step. Obviously, that's gonna change sometimes when we have an actual body in our space. So what Mr. Loomis said is, he can put his foot kind of where he needs to be able to open up into that putt, and the answer is yes. And it's gonna look different with Mr. Watkins versus me versus another opponent. It's all gonna depend on the size and range of your opponent. So that's a really good thing to start to think about, is that your foot placement goes where it needs to go to be able to accomplish what you're trying to do, rather than it goes here to here to here. That may not work when there's a body in your way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
practice another minute or so.
So you're coming off the routine. Okay.
Turn in.
Yep, good, good, yeah, very good. Yes, Mr. Payne, a little more waist.
A little more weight.
Yep. Your waist, let's put it this way, your waist was in the exact right spot, but then it was like you shifted and then did this with your arm, rather than arm comes with your
This
waist.
was the shift.
But it was correct.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff happening.
That's it, yep, you get it.
I'm not hurt yet. Here, come on, that.
Good, good,
I feel that.
good.
I can feel it.
That's the turn, that's the
I
turn.
can feel here, your body.
Okay.
Okay, so you can, kind of, when you do this, you can sort of leverage.
Not so much, it's more pulling this way, not out that way. It's a little bit of, I don't wanna call it splitting, but it's a little bit of splitting just in that segment.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I got you.
Right.
Ting,
Hey,
Thank
good job.
Thank you.
Once we get bags hung up, it's a great one to be able to feel against a bag, what that ward off feels like with your arm versus your whole body behind it. So eventually we'll get to practice that once we get the frame with the bags hung up. Because, yeah, because it's deceptively powerful. Like, it doesn't feel like you're putting a lot of effort into it, but you can really whack something pretty hard with the forearm and your body weight behind it. So rather than be afraid of like, did I just get you and the diaphragm to knock your wind out of you, when you wouldn't feel like you necessarily did that, bags are a great way to practice that. So we can do that once we have those up. Any other questions about these two so far?
you.
All right.
Practicing at home.
Good job, yep.
No black eyes.
Yeah, I'll know if I see, like, bruises and.
well,
Like,
she's not the one that's gonna be bruised.
You know who's gonna get bruised.
That's exactly it.
Mrs. Payne, have you been beating up on Mr. Payne again?
Have you stopped beating up on me?
All right, so with that, if there's no other questions, let's go ahead and bow out, and we'll do our Leopard life skill. And last night I talked to the camera very specifically this life skill, and I found out that the YouTube wasn't running. So I'm like, but I was teaching to it. So again, remember, Tai Chi is Kung Fu. It's just slow motion Kung Fu. So even though there's some stances and some strikes and some foot placement that you don't see that regularly, that doesn't mean it's a completely separate discipline. It's just a different way of doing a Kung Fu. So all of this stuff that we do in Tai Chi is Kung Fu. It's just slowed down. So that said, that strike that we talked about, leopard paw, arms up, bring fingers up, close the fingers, lift up the index finger, and this is mostly your striking surface. And then a bow stance, I had some questions about that. So it's basically everything we tell you not to do in Yang style Tai Chi. It does happen in Chen style Tai Chi, but a bow stance is going to be longer than double dragons and narrower. It's not quite a tightrope, that doesn't feel right. So it's a little bit wide, but it's not shoulder width apart. and then weight on the front leg. So this is a very common martial arts stance. You can really push this to be like thigh parallel, really long, provided you can get out of it. It's all gonna just depend on what your body's doing. So it's narrower than double dragons, longer than double dragons, super common in pretty much everything except Yang style Tai Chi, but including other styles of Tai Chi. So, the path of self-mastery requires a focused mind. A focused mind, step out to bow stance, shift, sees no obstacles. The path of self-mastery requires a focused mind. A focused mind sees no obstacles. The path of self-mastery requires a focused mind. A focused mind sees no obstacles. Good work.
So we're looking that way at the end, but looking this way.
Well, you know where you're being punching or hitting. Your focused mind stays focused.
Final head instructor.
Bow to intermediate level students, students at home. Black SAS training is dismissed. Good job, everybody. Nice work.